What I'm going to be covering today is I'm going to be showing you how I went from this initial image here on the left to this image here on the right, doing Screentones in Clip Studio. Okay, so we have our brand new file. I just opened it. Going to go to File, Import, which if you're a Photoshop user, you are used to seeing place. The term is import. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here down to our layer properties. Well, our layer panel, and we'll click on the blending mode. Sorry, layer properties is up here. We want the blending mode option right here. We're going to multiply. And what this will do is this will allow us to draw underneath our fully white image here. I'm just gonna, and again, I'm going slow, bare bones, as if no one has ever seen this before, so forgive me if you already know this part here. So you can see I was able to draw on top of or underneath it and still have basically the whites be see-through. That's essentially, when you're working in a black and white image, that's basically what the multiply layer does. It goes way deeper than that, but I'm keeping it simple here. So we're ready to add our tones, right? Let's go ahead and do our first one. There are two main ways to add Screentones in Clip Studio. Let's go ahead and do our background. So the first way is to create a selection area, and then you'll have a selection toolbar that'll pop up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the very far back background area behind all the bamboo, all of the vegetation. And then down here, yeah, you guys can see it. There's this little bar that pops up for all the different things you can do with your selection. And there's a little one that looks like a checkerboard, and if you hover over it, it'll say New Tone. You want to select that one. There's this handy dandy little box that comes up. This is your simple tone settings. I have a Cintiq here. Oh, this light is glaring really bad, but at least you guys can see that there is a box here. We have all these different settings. We're just going to do standard settings, okay? I did not know that it would not pop up. I didn't test it. I'm very sorry. But now we have our result. We have a screen tone that came up. What's really interesting, you guys might notice, and I'm going to show you guys this really quick, is that as I zoom in and out, the screen tone, you might see these really strange patterns that come up. That's called a moire pattern. And basically what it is, it's bad. Screen tones are more or less math, basically. They're geometrical things. And so as you zoom in and out, depending on your resolution, you can get these really strange patterns in there, and that's one of the bigger problems with screen tones, is that you'll have to make sure that whatever your final size is, that when you shrink down to print, you're not going to get these horrible patterns. And so it's always really good to, when you're saving your pattern or your page, when you're done, always shrink it down to full size, and then print it out, test it, make sure that it's going to print appropriately so that you're not getting any of these like really ugly, weird moire patterns. So that'll be really helpful. So we've got our screen tone. I'm going to zoom out so we can see the full image here. And that's kind of nice, but you know, this is, you know, a dark environment. It's raining. We want to have it be maybe like this really nice, like dark to light kind of situation. So this is a good base. It's a middle tone. But let's make it darker. What we're going to do to edit the screen tone that we've already made is we're going to make this larger. You guys can see it. We're going to come over here to the layer property panel, and if you don't have that panel open, it's really easy. All you do is you go to window, then layer property. I already have it open, so I'm not going to click it, but you want to make sure you have that check mark right next to it. So let's, okay, so we make sure we have our tone selected. That just tells us that there's a tone effect being applied to this layer. Now we have two different settings here, well, three settings here that are really, really important. We have our screen frequency, and then we have our density. See what you like, how light or dark. I like to say that the screen frequency is how many dots there are, and the density is how light or dark it is. That's kind of how I've learned to figure this out. So, but what's really neat is with your frequency here, you can change how many dots there are, but for the most part it'll keep the same value. And when you're working on something like comics, manga, that sort of thing, especially manga, your values are incredibly important because that's what determines if you're able to see. That's why on something like this I have, you know, these lighter lines that go kind of all around the bamboo, is to kind of help the values stick out a little bit better. So we're going to put in a moderate frequency, but we're going to ramp up the density. We're just going to kind of play there. I really like that. So so I like this. We're going to sit here. We like that. I think we're good, yeah? Alright, but we want to have it darker up here. There's two things that we can do. One of the things, oopsie. We're going to make a new layer really quick. I'm a monster. I don't name my layers. So, but, oh, autosave. 1 second. Clip Studio does have an autosave feature. You can control how often it saves. I have mine set to save, I believe, every 10-15 minutes. Because bad things happen. So, for you guys, I shall name the layer. Maybe. No, I'm not. But I'm going to show you guys the other way to add a screen tone. Typically, I wouldn't add screen tone on screen tone, but I'm just going to show you guys, for example, of things that can happen. So, first off, we're going to go get our selection tool. We're going to create a gradient. Now, you could create a manga gradient, but I'm not going to do that. I don't find that particularly useful. I'm just going to grab basically a marquee, a selection area. I'm going to grab my airbrush. I'm going to throw this in here really quick. I could just use the gradient tool, but I kind of want to customize this. So, alright, so we've got that in there. That's kind of nice. And I'm going to deselect. And that looks kind of nice. You know, it's kind of darker up more in the center, whatever. The other way to add in a tone. So you already have your layer drawn. If you have something like this, then you want to add like a gradient. So I'm going to turn this off. You've got this kind of soft area. If I want to turn this into a screen tone, you again just go back to your layer property panel and hit the tone button. Boom, now it's a screen tone. And what's really cool is all of the different gradations that you had in your original picture, you now have in here too. But see what I mean? How right here it got kind of wonky with the screen with the toning. That's one thing you do have to be careful of, especially when you're doing the actual, like you draw the layer and then you turn it into a tone. It can get a little weird on you, and then when we start adding color to our screen tones, that's when it can get really, really, really wonky if you're not careful. So I'm going to take this layer where we did our gradient. I'm going to turn that down, or turn it to multiply. Let's see here. I think it's good. Alright, now that looks kind of cool, but wait, I wanted to have it down a little further. Well, no worries, dude. Just add on to it. So we still have our airbrush tool selected. All you gotta do is just go on down. You see how it's bringing it down here as well? So what it's doing is it's just adding to it. We're good. No worries. So, but we're like, oh wait, you know, we want to get rid of, you know, the screen tone stuff that we didn't need. Well, you can erase it too. There's actually 2 ways to erase things in Clip Studio, which I really, really love. And I wish I had known about this before. So, we have our brush tool here, our pen tool here. And we want to be able to erase. I mean, we could use our eraser, we totally could, but there's another way to do this. If you have your pen tool selected, say you want like a special effect or something, or like a particular pen that you have. Let's find one. Okie dokie. Alright, so one of the coolio things. So just so you guys can see this brush, it's got like a weird splatter effect. I chose this one because it'll be really, really easy to see when we go into here. So I want to be able to erase it using this brush pattern. There is no such brush like this in my eraser settings. But what I can do is I can go either down here, which is kind of hidden because of my toolbar. I don't know why it does this, but it does that. Or you can go up to your color wheel and select this little transparent box. And what it'll do is it will draw with transparency, is basically what it does. It's a really, really, really cool tool, just to kind of show you. Now, I wouldn't actually do this for this particular image, but you guys can kind of see what I mean with what it does. So we did that, and we want to do that down here too. Maybe clean up some of the foliage here. With this, you got to be really careful. Just make sure you've got the right layer selected. This is actually a mask, So just so you guys can understand, so you guys can see it's getting rid of some of the screen tone that, you know, we don't need or whatever. I'll make the brush bigger. So you can get some really, really neat effects. You can get some really, really neat stuff by drawing with transparency. That's basically the way that I describe it. It's a really, really neat, useful tool. You can get away with all sorts of really, really cool stuff. I'm sorry if you guys thought I was actually going to do the full screen tone thing. It'll take a really long time, but now I'm going to get a little serious here and stop goofing off. So one other thing that I totally forgot to mention, this is totally worth mentioning, is that, let's do it this way. So you don't necessarily just have to have dots. When you look at screen tones, especially in like manga and comics, a lot of them have like, some of them have lines, some of them don't, some of them look more like stars, some of them look like squares, or you can have hatching or cross hatching. You can do all of those things in Clip Studio as well. So I want to do this bamboo stock, and I want to have straight up and down lines because that's how bamboo looks, right? Yeah, totally. So let's do it. So I selected my area, my screen tone tool. I'm going to skip the settings here only because you guys can't see it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and edit them instead. So again, I've got my screen tone right here that I just made for the bamboo. We're going to go into our dot settings, which is the third setting I was telling you guys about. We'll hit this one and we have all these different options. It's really, really, really cool. I'm going to actually turn this one off, these two off, and zoom in so you guys can actually see the changes as I apply them. So here's our bamboo. Right now you can see that it's on a dotted pattern. We want lines. Boom, you're done. It's lines now. How cool is that? Here's the other part. For stuff like lines, hatching, or cross-hatching, you can also change the direction. So we want this to be going up and down, because bamboo grows up and down. So we'll go in here, and I know I need about a 90-degree angle. Right there. So that's cool, yeah? And then I'm like, well, I've got all this other stuff. You can either go in and erase what you don't need. Just kind of neat. And you're like, oh no, I erased too much. Whatever shall I do? All you gotta do is grab your pen, grab black for your color. Whoops, let me get a normal pen here. And just fill it back in. And it'll pretty much do the tone for you. Isn't that cool or what? Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. I used to do a lot of my screen tones manually by myself when I was in Photoshop, or like I'd go download them and be like, oh no, like, yeah, the screen tone just isn't gonna look right, it's gonna look terrible, you know, and because when it prints and you have to upscale it, downscale it. When you're using screen tones, upscaling and downscaling is definitely risky because you have the risk of the moire patterns that I mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to take out part of this because there's something else I want to show you guys that's really, really, really cool. Okay, so we have our bamboo here. We're going to adjust the frequency a little bit. Now that's cool and all, but we can see through it. We don't want to necessarily have to deal with that. So we're going to click another layer property tool called layer color. This one is pretty cool. See what it just did there? It just turned our black and white, black and clear, to blue and white. I think it's pretty nifty. So now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down here. And we've got our different colors here. So we can change what color our bamboo is. Now do you see what I just did? I now made it so that our bamboo will have white lines instead of black ones. I'll show you. Let me put a clear color back here behind it so you guys can actually see. Isn't that nifty? So now our bamboo will have white lines instead of black ones. This would be really useful if you have like just a solid black background. So let me turn this off. Alright, so here's our, here's our artwork right here. We want to be able to see that. Now, the only issue with stuff like this is it is see-through. There really isn't any avoiding this. So you might have to go in and fill it in, but here's the really nifty part to make it really easy. If you need to fill in a screen tone, such as an example of this, it's really easy. These clipping masks can come into your favor. Say we want to add a nice green behind this, and our screen tone already fills in the space that we'd have to fill. There's two different options. Either you can try to color it in manually, and it's going to take utterly forever. The other thing you can do, take your control button, take your pen, or whatever, and click on the mask. What that'll do is that will select all the areas that your screen tone that it exists. So I'm going to take a layer below. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to fill in the green. I'm going to make it a bright green just so it's easy to see. I'm going to fill that in using Alt-Delete. And now we have this filled in, green. And now we can just have our screen tone on top of it. But let's go back to the black tone. So we're going to select our layer again. And we want our lines to actually be white. Or be black. So we're going to select black, layer color, and then there. So now we've got black lines for the bamboo again. Hope that makes sense. So you can add color. Now if we wanted to, we could make the lines red if we wanted. Oof, red and green. That was a bad choice idea. We can make them blue. We could make them gray. We can make them like a hot pink. We can print, which will look really bad because it's green. You can pretty much do whatever you want. So that's a really, really cool thing about the screen tone tool and all that fun stuff. Now, if you want, there's another option in here. You can download tones as well. So let's X-nay all the stuff that I just added. And let's say I want to put in a cloudy background here because I happen to have a cloudy background tone. So I'm going to go into my assets, Clip Studio. I'm going to go into my assets, which I have saved and downloaded. You can do it, buddy. There we go. Here's a tone that I downloaded just for the occasion. This I downloaded from the Clip Studio assets. But basically what I did is I went and I downloaded all this other stuff. And so I'm going to take the tone that I want and I'm going to drag it into my artwork. You can see the little plus there. It'll add it and it'll think about it because it's a rather large image. You can do it! It's because I've got all this extra stuff running. So looky there! We have another tone here that we added. Oh, autosave. Good boy. Ta-da! Now we have a screen tone background with no effort. So the only thing you have to watch out for is when you're downloading assets to use is that you have to keep in mind what the rights might be on that image. There are some creators in the Clip Studio assets that either want to be credited or you're not allowed to use them for commercial purposes, such as a manga. I'm very careful to watch that, and yes, I do actually pay and buy things, like it's creators supporting creators. So that's a really cool option. Another thing that's really cool that you can use as screen tones if you don't necessarily want to use like actual screen tones is patterns. So this would be really, really good for clothes. So we have all these really neat patterns. Ooh, that'd be a really pretty one. Or this one. So let me hide that. So let's say Coco here gets to be colored with flowers. That is his pattern. His pattern is flowers. We have this really beautiful pattern here. I'm going to drag over. This is another asset that I downloaded. You can see this pattern here is flowers. It's very, very beautiful. I love this artist. They do great stuff. So I'm going to go in, I can resize this, I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller. Some of the stuff in Clip Studio is vector based and some of it's not. Some of it's more of just like smart object, and when you're upscaling, as a general rule of thumb, you usually can't go more than halfway, so like 150% is usually the max before things start looking really crappy. But also consider your final printing size. It may not make that big a difference. So I'm going to shrink this just so we can really see all the flowers. I'm going to call it done. Oops, so if I select the right button here. But I only want Cocoa selected. So what I can do is I can go to my lasso tool, kind of select the area for Cocoa. Cocoa is my little bird from the Nora manga, if you did not know. Alright, so I've got my area selected. I have the layer selected, and I'm going to hit the mask button. Boom! Now we have only Cocoa selected. So what's really neat is you can move these independently. So say you like where it is, but it's not quite aligned properly. You have this little check mark here that you can either have it move with the mask or move without the mask. So with the check mark on, if I try to move this, it'll move the whole thing together, like it's like they're locked together. And if I turn that check mark off, then I can move just the image below the mask so that I can adjust it to make sure. So like if I want this flower to look like it's sitting right on Coco's head, I can do that. Or maybe I don't want that. Maybe it just looks a little too strange. I can move it up a little bit so that it doesn't look quite so weird. Same thing with really any other pattern, even patterns that repeat themselves. So let's find a pattern here. This one. Ooh, this is a bright one. This one repeats itself. We're going to do the same thing. So, yeah, check this one out. This one repeats itself and covers the whole image. So it starts from this original pattern size. So it can get smaller, it can get bigger. So something like this you can use as a screen tone, and I'll show you in 1 second. So first off, we need to cut it down to size. That's basically what you do in normal screen tones. They're basically an adhesive paper that you lay down flat, you cut out what you need, and then you save and or discard the rest. So we have the tone that we want. We're going to do the same thing we just did. I'm going to go in, select the area for Cocoa. I'm going to do it a little more loosely this time. Hi, Miso. Hi. Can you wait 1 second, darling? Miso's my cat. I'm going to create my mask. So we have only the area that we want. And now I want to change it again. Now here's the problem that we have to remember. Because this object, this pattern, is a smart object, we cannot just, transform it the normal way that we would. We have to go into the operation tool. And then we can edit it. You'll see this little box that pops up. You can adjust it from here. So that's really the only part that's a little confusing because it is more of a smart object. You'll have to treat it like one. And Miso. She's scratching on her little scratchy post. She's making noise. You're like a child making noise. Don't know what to do. My cat. Okay, so now we've got this really, really cool object here. It's really nice. We want it to be a screen tone, though. We want to have those dot patterns. Miso! Shush. Mommy is working. We want to have that nice tone effect. So, again, we'll go back to our layer properties. Hit screen tone. Ta-da! Now we want the orange color back. No, it's fine. Select your color in your little window here. Remember, hit your layer color. Now it'll go to blue by default. It always does. All we have to do is scroll down to our layer color. Make sure it's in your foreground. Select. There you go. You're good, mate. You're good. Isn't that cool? I love the screen tone tool. It honestly, for me, was one of the #1 reasons that I switched over from Photoshop to Clip Studio, because it comes with all of these tools. They're very easy to edit. If you're having a problem with your printing and you need to adjust your screen tones so that you don't get that really icky moire pattern, it's very easy to edit. So But yeah, it's pretty handy dandy tool, yeah. There's one other thing that miso that I want to show you guys. So there's one other way to do a tone sort of pattern. In manga, there's this really famous like cross hatching sort of tone pattern. Clip Studio actually has a tool for this, and I'm going to show it to you. Again, we're underneath, we've got a brand new layer. Clip Studio has a tool called the Deco tool or decoration tool. You'll find it right underneath your airbrush. If you hover over it, it'll say decoration. The hotkey is B. The gauze cloud. It's my absolute favorite. So we have our gauze cloud selected. It's under hatching, and then gauze cloud. There's gauze, and then there's a gauze cloud, and that's pretty much what it looks like. Is it looks kind of like a cloud. We're gonna enlarge the brush. Oop, we don't want it too big. And that's pretty much this effect that you see like everywhere in manga. Most of the time, when you see it, it'll actually be like a black shaded area, like that. And then where you'll see the effect is it's usually in white. Whoops. So it'll look like that. Yeah. That's where this is. Clip Studio actually has a tool for that. Isn't that awesome? I love it. This I use so much. I used it in one of my other pages to create like a really nice kind of effect here. There we go. So this is another example of me testing out tones and textures, and that was one thing that I did right here in this area, is I was able to use same thing. I did it right here. And then I did it right here as well, kind of behind to Kumkishu, and then this little speech bubble right here. I was able to use that gauze cloud to kind of, because without it, it looks really, really plain. Oh, here it is. I found it. There we go. So without it, it just doesn't, this doesn't look very good. So it just looks kind of plain, kind of a white page. Ugh. But you add in the tone, and it just kind of adds like an extra layer of dimension. Yeah, looks kind of cool. So that's pretty much it. That's the really like super bare bones basics of Screentones. Again, using some of the Screentones, Screentone tools that I showed you. I kind of showed you guys how to add in the backgrounds, how to take the gauze cloud, and then add various different effects to it, how to add Screentones using that layer properties panel, both from the selection tool and then from a pre-made layer. I showed you guys how to add color to your Screentones, and then how to reverse the color of the Screentones, so that you can either have your dots be the actual color or your fills be the actual color. It doesn't matter, it can go either way. I showed you guys how to change Screentones from dots to lines, and really the type of tones that you can have are infinite. You can have, you know, crossed lines, you can have hatching, you can have cherries, stars, squares, diamonds, spades. You can have them as pretty much anything you can possibly imagine. And then I showed you guys how to add things with the deco brush, such as the gauze cloud, and how you can use that effect in tangent with some of your Screentones. And then I also showed you guys how to take some patterns that you can download, throw them into Clip Studio, and then turn them into a Screentone that you can use, especially for things like clothes, which you aren't going to want to have to draw those every single time. So having a pattern or Screentone for clothes is really, really helpful. So I hope that was really beneficial to you guys. Plus I kind of wanted to go maybe a little bit slow in case someone else jumped in. There's just so much to talk about when you're doing Screentones. You know, it's a very, very useful tool. It's one of those tools, honestly, you're just going to have to sit down, play with, kind of figure out, is this going to be something that I think is going to be really useful for me? Is this something that I really want to get into? And then just being aware of if you are taking your stuff to print, or if you're downsizing them, your images to post on something like Tapastic, DeviantArt, Line Webtoon, even on the actual Clip Studio site. I'll be posting mine on Pop Comics. So, you know, eventually once I get my pages, once I get myself organized and I actually start getting my pages done, I'll be posting them there. So I hope you guys found that useful. If you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate to get some help. If you, for some reason, are still watching, and I really appreciate you. Thank you for staying through the stream. I hope it was helpful to you guys. Please drop comments, questions, concerns, hockey scores down below. I definitely read everything. So I'll probably be doing more streams like this, where this was kind of just an impromptu thing. But I'll probably be doing some stuff like this a little bit more thorough, where I'll be working on pages and be able to do in-depth kind of while I'm working explanations. So thank you very much for coming. I am Nicole Lynn from Art Crumbs, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.